Good day. It's Reverend James Fother, pastor of the United Church of Montbello, and just beginning my broadcast with some sadness for where we are in our country. I've got two meditations that will pull from Reverend Dr. Susan K. Williams Smith today from her wonderful text, Rest for the Justice Seeking Soul. And I got to begin today. I'm sorry I won't be beginning with music, but an urgent call for prayers of peace that's come fresh from my Rocky Mountain Conference of the United Church of Christ. And with that, I ask you and your communities to right now start hourly prayer continuous throughout this day. And it is January 6, 2021. Hourly prayers continuous throughout this day for President Trump to lead his protesters out of this violent moment before someone gets injured. And there are reports that someone's already been shot in the Capitol, and other reports of injuries. For a blanket of ease to fall upon President Trump, which allows him to accept the provisions of our Constitution regarding a peaceful transition of power and move in the coming days to uphold our democracy. For a cooling balm to fall upon the entire District of Columbia to calm this before it ignites. For each protester to feel at peace that their voice has been heard and turn to go home. For each member of Congress and their staffs and all those staffing the Capitol and all Capitol Hill police and other peacekeeping agents to remain safe from harm until this matter settles. For each of our neighbors who have opinions which differ from our own, that we may find peaceable relations with one another for each of us, so that we can live through this moment, remembering Jesus' command to love one another is our center. Bless you all in this difficult moment, Reverend Sue Art. And I send my grateful thanks to Reverend Art for this encouragement for urgent prayers of peace throughout the rest of this day into tomorrow and into the activities that lie ahead, especially in the inauguration on January 20th. The Holes That Won't Heal is the name of our first devotion for today. And it's based on 2 Corinthians, the 4th chapter, verses 8 through 10. You know, that powerful passage of Paul's writing to the good folks in the church at Corinth. We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed. Perplexed, but not driven to despair. Persecuted, but not forsaken. Struck down, but not destroyed. Always carrying in the body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be made visible in our bodies. May God add a blessing to the reading, hearing, and doing of God's own holy word. Here's the devotion. Part of the reason there is so much pain in our current political climate is due to the viciousness of the dialogue, the name calling, the put downs, and the humiliation and denigration of so many people has no precedent in recent history. We erroneously believe that people would hear the vile words and threats of a presidential candidate and that they would be repulsed and vote against him. And even though the majority of voters did just that, far more people than expected, Christian people, ignored his words and voted for him anyway. The fact that so many millions of people resonated with those words puzzled people. Our country, who would attack them and get away with it. Howard Thurman wrote of a time when, as a child growing up in segregated Daytona Beach, Florida, a white boy attacked and jabbed him with a pen as he mowed the lawn of a white person. As Thurman gathered his wits and struggled to deal with the pain, the white boy said, "Ha, that didn't hurt you. You can't feel." The audacity of the arrogance of oppression is hard to accept, and yet that arrogance accompanies oppressed people, as it always has. The dehumanization of God's children, who happen not to be white, has been far-reaching and deeply ingrained. All oppressed people have to reach for God in order to stay above the waters of anger and despair. As more election cycles loom in our future, the caregivers are wrestling with their own emotions, anger, bitterness, sadness, etc., even as they try to comfort the disheartened who are looking for God in this space. Thick with the racial, sexual, cultural, and religious fog of oppression, many faithful believers are struggling for breath. Indeed, they are being choked by the very pressure of oppression and are in no less danger of dying than was Eric Garner, who, as a police officer wrestled him to the ground, cried out, "I can't breathe." The little boy who jabbed Howard Thurman's father gave the boy some nails and a hammer and told him to hammer the nails into the fence post. The boy was puzzled, but he did it. The next day, as they walked by the same fence, the old man told the boy to pull out all the nails he had nailed into the fence the day before. Puzzled again, the boy did as he was told. When all the nails were out, the grandfather asked the little boy, "What did you see?" The little boy said, the pretty fence is all ruined. There are holes in it where the nails used to be." The grandfather shook his head slowly and said, "That's what happens when people are not good to each other, when they say unkind things to each other. They leave holes in each other, and they are never the same. The holes do not go away." Oppressed people know that pain in a way that the oppressor does, not because he cannot. Oppressed people know that pain in a way that the oppressor does not, because the oppressor cannot. The only reassurance we have is that God is. Paul reminds us that we are afflicted in every way but not crushed, perplexed but not driven to despair, persecuted but not forsaken, struck down but not destroyed. The holes caused by oppression are the permanent scars we carry. They are now part of our DNA. But so is the grace and the presence of God. In the end, it is the latter that overcomes the damage done by those who would annihilate us. Amen and amen. My second and final devotion for the day is based on Psalm 37, verses 1 and 2. It's called When Your Heart Aches, because my heart is truly aching right now. And I need that rest that the Reverend Dr. Susan K. Williams Smith speaks of, available to justice-seeking souls. When Your Heart Aches, based on Psalm 37, 1 and 2. Psalm 37, 1 and 2 reads this way: Do not fret because of the wicked. Do not be envious of wrongdoers, for they will soon fade like the grass and wither like the green herb. There are words contained in the Bible that act as spiritual protein to strengthen our spiritual resolve and bolster our faith when life causes our hearts to ache. How is your heart today? Is your heart aching like mine? I recently experienced such a day where I live in Columbus, Ohio. Reverend Susan wrote, when an arbitrator ruled to reinstate a white police officer into the Columbus Police Department who had been fired for kicking a young black man in the head as he lay on the ground in handcuffs. This same officer had been in the news before because of his involvement in the shooting death of another unarmed black man the year prior. One more time. Black life was devalued and dishonored by law enforcement, carrying out a long-standing tradition. Throughout the history of this country, white law enforcement officers have metaphorically and physically stomped on the heads of black people, kicked us while we were down, and at times even executed us in cold blood, unconcerned about any legal consequences. The pervasiveness of evil is not new. Its stubborn persistence hearkens the words found in Psalm 37. When will all this evil of white supremacy finally fade and wither? McGuire highlights the black women who were humiliated. When Parks was arrested, they gathered at Alabama State University and in one night used a mimeograph machine to make 52,000 flyers calling for a one-day boycott of all Montgomery buses. The next morning, they hit the streets, posting and passing out the flyers everywhere. They stood on street corners, put them in the windows of beauty parlors, and barbershops, and nailed them to telephone poles. Had it not been for the aching hearts of those black women, there would not have been a Montgomery bus boycott, certainly not one that lasted for 381 days. Historical stories like these become both nurturing food and healing balm. But the beauty of their example, as well as other examples found in the Bible. This Columbus police officer was reinstated into the police department. The universe must have gasped. The foot soldiers for justice drew in a long breath. The struggle continues, and it is exasperating. But if enough hearts are aching, even in this time, when white supremacy is strutting amongst us with a renewed arrogance, many of us are being moved from complacency and fear toward courage and action. Aching hearts will only take so much. They are a gift in the fight for justice. It is a weird thing to thank God for, but we can thank God anyhow because of the fact that aching hearts eventually cause us to stand up and risk everything when we can't take it anymore. Aching hearts compel us to release what we can no longer endure and to work for what we thought we would never have. Thank God, then, for aching hearts. They are a gift too precious for the work we have been called to do. Amen and amen. What is that work today? January 6, 2021. That work is for urgent prayers hourly, for peace, for something to turn the heart of this dictatorish leader in the presidential suite of our country. Urgently, let us all pray, not just for peace in faraway places, but for peace in our own hearts, peace that will help us to reach across divides that keep us from knowing and understanding ways that compel more peaceful actions, even when there are things we disagree about and disagree over. What we've seen today, we should never see in our democracy. What we have seen today, the whole world should never see in the capital city of Washington, D.C., in the United States of America. It is absolutely deplorable, and my heart is aching. I'm sending you my prayers today, this January 6, 2021. And I seek your prayers for me to get myself together, to try and keep going on. Thank you for your prayers in advance. Holy God, now chart the way ahead that we might find the pathways for peace and justice and understanding and compassion that we truly need. We ask these things in Jesus' name.